Ripple just hired 2 new attorneys that put in motions to the judge to basically ask permission to represent Ripple in the case versus the SEC. So why did Ripple do this? Well, I'm going to tell you what these 2 new attorneys specialize in, where they're from, and why they're sending motions to the judge. Because one of the attorneys specializes in something that I thought was of particular interest. Also, I'm going to talk about what Bitcoin is doing on-chain from on-chain analysis company Glassnode. There's some really interesting statistics about what some people are saying is a bottom signal and why there's barely anybody buying Bitcoin except for 2 specific groups. I'm going to tell you who's buying Bitcoin and at what rate, because according to them, it's some of the fastest rates of Bitcoin buying ever. Also, Celsius just made news earlier today because they've been facing some solvency issues and they've somewhat mitigated it. So are the people that are holding their crypto tokens on Celsius actually going to be able to withdraw their tokens? Why do I ask that? Because Celsius has paused all withdrawals for those holding their crypto tokens for staking, earning rewards onto their network. And just recently, they've been paying out rewards once again. So why are they paying out rewards but not allowing withdrawals? I have some information on what they just did. Hey everyone, my name is Randy. Welcome back to the Late Night Grind. Right now on this channel, we are covering the Ripple versus the SEC case, as well as other cryptocurrency news, investment markets, and personal finance. So if any or all these topics interest you, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Late Night Grind community. Also, if you want to support this channel, best thing you can do, smash the thumbs up button, watch this video all the way to the end, and also check out my Patreon, because there's a link in the description below with a specific video that I just put live. And that video talks about a cryptocurrency project that I am most bullish on for the next week or 2. I'm adding content to my Patreon, so if you want to look at some information on what could potentially make you some money on your investments, well, you might want to check out my Patreon. I go into some of the deeper dives. What are the charts saying? What are some price targets for the short term and the longer term? So you can check out that link in the description and check out the video that I just put up, as well as what I have plans, as well as what are some of the plans for the rest of the month. All right, guys, if you do that, I'd greatly appreciate it. Let's jump into it. Okay, so let's talk about what Bitcoin is doing right now. And that is, according to Glassnode, it is basically not being bought by anybody except for 2 specific groups. There's a reason why I said that some analysis are now saying that this is yet another bottom signal, that Bitcoin is nearing the bottom of its price before it capitulates and moves upward. And that is, retail buyers are no longer buying Bitcoin. They said basically all exchanges are completely silent of anybody that's new, that's either A, new to the cryptocurrency world, or B, have very little cryptocurrencies or do very little cryptocurrency buying. Basically, the retail, what they call it, has been non-existent for the last month or so. It's at its lowest rate that it's been at in about a year and a half, which makes a lot of sense. Its price has not gone up in a long time. So there are 2 specific groups of people that are continuously buying, and not only that, they're buying at the fastest rate, according to Glassnode, at some of the fastest buying rates that Bitcoin's ever experienced. So who are these groups? Number 1, it is the whales, but not the macro whales, kind of the secondary whales. Addresses that hold anywhere between 1,000 and 5,000 Bitcoin are continuously buying, but that's not a shock. Now, obviously, we know the Michael Saylors of the world. Those are the macro whales. Those haven't actually done as much buying as the smaller whales. The smaller whales are doing a ton of buying. So who's the second group? The second group is actually the shrimps. Well, that sounds like retail, doesn't it? Well, not according to Glassnode. A shrimp is somebody who holds less than 1 Bitcoin. People who hold less than 1 Bitcoin but are a long-term holder and therefore believe in the purpose of Bitcoin are doing some of the most fast and furious buying of all time. So a lot of these people are doing what they call DCAing, or dollar cost averaging, meaning you're just buying Bitcoin at a specific time frame, not necessarily a specific price. So every Friday you buy $100 worth of Bitcoin or $1,000 worth of Bitcoin or whatever your budget is buying. That's what a lot of the shrimps are doing, at least according to some of this analysis. So you have the people who believe in Bitcoin who don't own that much, and the people who believe in Bitcoin that own a ton of it. Those are pretty much the only people doing the buying right now. That is what has some analysts saying this is a bottom signal, that Bitcoin was not going to capitulate in price until a lot of the retail has been shaken out, until a lot of the mainstream media stopped talking about it, until everybody thought there was fear everywhere, blood in the streets. You know the story. It's not going to go up until that happens. I believe that this is one of the bottom buy signals. I don't think there's any one specific signal, but if you put a bunch of these that are starting to come out together, when you have more and more and more and more bottom signals, such as this one, well, you might be nearing the bottom. All right, so now let's talk about Celsius for a minute. Because Celsius, the last couple of weeks, they're facing solvency issues. In fact, they paused all withdrawals for people holding their tokens on the Celsius network in the hopes of earning rewards, earning staking rewards, earning a return that some say is just unsustainable. It's too ridiculously high. That is why when the price of Bitcoin dropped dramatically, basically the Celsius network said, but hold on, we can't allow withdrawals anymore because it's going to make us insolvent because you see everything we're paying out is backed by Bitcoin, and when Bitcoin tanks, well, it just doesn't make our business model work. So what did they do that actually has them not only paying out rewards, but has some people speculating that they could be allowing withdrawals very soon? Well, over the weekend, they paid down at least part of a loan, about $142 million of a loan that they had of Bitcoin. Now what this did was essentially push their liquidation number, or the number that Bitcoin would have to drop to, at which point they would face liquidation and lose all of their assets. They paid $142 million using the DAI stablecoin, and they paid off enough so that Bitcoin would have to drop below $5,000 in order for them to actually be liquidated and have their Bitcoin assets sold off. So is essentially kicking the can down the road. Well, if you think that Bitcoin is going to go below $5,000 at some point, then yeah, it might just be kicking the can down the road. But if you think Bitcoin's not ever going to reach that price that low, or it's just going to capitulate and go up from there, then at some point you have hope. If you have cryptocurrencies currently held on the Celsius network that you were essentially earning rewards on from the Celsius network, that you're going to be able to get those at some point. So that's some of the best news that Celsius users have heard in a long time. And so probably in the next couple of weeks, we're going to see exactly how far that goes and see if withdrawals are again allowed. All right, so now let's talk about Ripple versus the SEC, because news just broke today. And I don't know how breaking it actually is, because Ripple's done this a couple of times. They've actually hired 2 new attorneys. Now, I don't believe that they're replacing the general counsels that they have now. This would just be in addition to. Ripple obviously has the funds to continue to pay people like this. So earlier today, these 2 new attorneys, which their names are Kylie Kim and Clayton Masterman, they're both from the legal firm Kellogg Hansen, Todd Heigl, and Frederick. They actually aren't allowed to represent cases in New York. So what they did is to file a motion, basically say we'd like to enter into this case, not to essentially be registered and work in New York, but to work specifically on this case for Ripple. So they filed the motion, what they called a pro hac vice or vice. I'm not exactly sure how that's pronounced, but basically asking the judge permission to enter into this case, even though they're not registered to work in New York specifically. So looking over both of these attorneys' profiles, James Filan actually tweeted out both of these, so a big shout out to James Filan for pointing this out. The bios of these 2 attorneys that are now going to be working for Ripple. The first one, Kylie Kim, she specializes, and this is what caught my attention, specifically in antitrust lawsuits, telecom, and False Claims Act cases. Now that's a really interesting for me, especially the false claims case, especially when you tie this with the other person from this same law firm that they're going to be using, Clayton Masterman. He actually had his most recent positions were as a court clerk for the DC Circuit as well as the 5th Circuit Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals. That's interesting because a lot of people are thinking that the judge is probably going to rule in Ripple's favor in these 2 most recent motions, specifically the Hinman emails that the SEC has been trying to hide all along. If it doesn't go in their favor, they may appeal. So maybe that's why they're bringing in some attorneys that have, that have a lot of experience working with A, Court of Appeals and how they actually work, and B, someone who specializes in false claims cases. So it looks like Ripple's already slam dunk home run attorney team is getting stronger by the day. So we're going to see if this goes forward. I'm guessing Jeremy Hogan, John Deaton, James Filan, our favorite outside attorneys covering this case, they'll probably have a lot more specific insights as to why Ripple is doing this, some of the technicalities of what they need to do and why they're doing it. So pay attention to their Twitter profiles. But in my opinion, it looks like Ripple is starting to fortify themselves into the fact that the SEC is just going into appeal, delay, delay, delay. And so that's just my opinion on what's going on and why Ripple is hiring these two new attorneys. They've done this before a couple of times. There was big speculation as to why, because one of them supposedly specialized in settlements. Of course, that went viral, but nothing really happened. So we're going to see what this does in the coming weeks, especially since we're waiting on two big decisions from Judge Netburn and Judge Torres regarding the Bill Hinman email. So if you want to follow along with those decisions and see what those decisions are as soon as they're made, I'm definitely going to be covering it, so make sure you're subscribed to the Late Night Grind. Also, if you want to learn more about cryptocurrencies and potentially where might be some good places to invest your money, or which cryptocurrencies you want to look out for the next couple of weeks or next couple of months, check out the link in check out the link in the description below to my Patreon. Putting up fresh video content on there, as well as some of the news feeds in there that I don't cover on this channel specifically. So if you go check that out, I'd appreciate it. And so not only I'm hoping to give you some more technical information that I don't really provide on this channel specifically, it also helps out supporting the channel as well. So if you do that, I greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, I really appreciate you watching this video all the way to the end. Of course, smash that thumbs up button. And as always, I'll see you guys on the next video.